Some of them went into a precipitous slide. We have with us Stephen Gaines today. Stephen has written a biography about the Beach Boys, which is called Heroes and Villains, the True Story of the Beach Boys. And it really, really does. The image of them that you paint is so much different from the one that we get, or got.
Right. Well, they were the symbols, the international symbols of good, clean California living, you know, girls in bikinis, sun, surf, fast cars. And their personal lives were, of course, very, very much different than that, tremendously different.
Well, for example, Dennis, you talk about Dennis Wilson, was known as the good-looking guy who was wonderful with women, but you paint him as being almost, well, sick when it comes to women.
Well, Dennis did have a problem with women. Dennis was a man of tremendous excess, whether it was alcohol or drugs or women. And he did find it necessary to have relations 4 or 5 or 6 times a day with women. It was a tremendous drive that he had from the time he was a little boy. But I think that's a problem, but I hardly think that's the worst of it.
Well, sure, let's talk about Dennis Wilson and the Manson family.
See, the thing about the Wilsons is the Beach Boys are really the Wilson family. Brian, the great composer-producer, middle brother Dennis, and younger brother Carl. And they were managed by their father. So this is really a family story. And each one of the 3 children had tremendous personal problems, mostly because of the way they were brought up. I mean, Murray was a child abuser, the Beach Boys' father. Murray, the father, was absolutely a monster. He did unspeakable things to the boys, much worse than just beating them up. Terrific psychological punishments. He would tie Brian to a tree and leave him out there all night. If Dennis refused to eat the tomatoes on his plate, he'd force Dennis to eat 20 tomatoes until he would throw up. Murray had a glass eye, and he would take the glass eye out and force the boys, when they were little children, to stare into the empty socket as punishment. So you're talking about children who were really had these terrible things inflicted on them. They were scarred as they were growing up. And then you get the adults. Brian, who's schizophrenic. Dennis, who has tremendous excess. Carl, who has his own personal problems.
We have a clip of the Beach Boys talking about their father, Murray. Why don't we take a look at that right now so you get a feel for what Stephen's talking about here. So they basically, they threw their father out of the business.
They fired him. He was practically ruining their careers. He was holding them back.
At the beginning of that tape, we noticed that Brian was in bed.
Yes.
Now tell us about that. Why was he in bed?
Well, Brian is clinically schizophrenic. He's a paranoid schizophrenic. He was always very strange. Probably all these terrible things that his father did had something to do with that. But as he got older, he began to withdraw from the world totally. And what he did was he went to bed, literally to bed, pulled the covers up over his head, moved a refrigerator into the bedroom, and stayed there for 6 or 7 or 8 years. So that clip that we saw was actually Brian.
8 years in bed?
Yes. And you know how they got him out of bed? They hired a very controversial Los Angeles psychologist named Gene Landy, who threw a bucket of cold water on him. That was the way. He said, how do you make a schizophrenic get up? He said, you douse him with cold water. Now, many people disagree with that. Many people feel that more traditional psychiatric therapy would have helped Brian better.
And that got him out of bed, throwing water on him?
Gene Landy charges upwards of $50,000 a month for his treatment. Brian is under 24-hour psychiatric care. He has 2 people with him. Only a rock star could afford something like this.
And he ballooned up, I guess, to 300 pounds?
Yes, over 300 pounds, until they forced him to go on a diet. Took all his food away from him. They watch him constantly, whatever he does. Dennis, he also went over the edge. Charles Manson,
well,
as you mentioned
tell us about the
before.
Manson family. I mean, we don't have much time, but here he brought Dennis.
He took them in.
Took them in. They lived with him.
They weren't murderers at that point. Nobody had heard of Manson. Dennis found Manson, thought he was a great musician, and invited Manson and all the girls to live with him. He paid their dental bills, their doctor bills. He gave them clothing. In fact, he allowed Manson to record a record album, an entire album in the Beach Boys studios.
Well, why didn't he see, because in the book you say other people saw, that Manson was crazy, that he was making ridiculous demands of people, that he stared at people kind of...
I think Dennis was on a lot of drugs at the time and very unhappy, and he loved the idea that all these girls were there and it was orgy time all the time, and that was very compelling to Dennis. So he put up with Manson for nearly a year. When the murders were committed, all the Beach Boys were horrified to learn that this guy, by the way, they recorded one of his songs, one of the Manson songs is on an album called 2020, so the Beach Boys put Charles Manson on the record charts.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it really is.
I mean, to talk about that group, the Beach Boys, in the same breath as the Manson family seems literally unbelievable.
You know what I think? I didn't write this book just for Beach Boy fans. I think the problems that are addressed in this book are the problems that American families are happening everywhere. It goes on behind closed doors. Child abuse, drug abuse, and alcoholism. And the way that the Beach Boys handle these problems in their family fascinates me.
What we're going to do now is take a look at the kind of modern-day Beach Boys. We have a little clip that was taken from not too long ago, and you'll see the transformation from the first one we showed in 1964 to one of the current ones. And again, the name of the book is Heroes and Villains, the true story of the Beach Boys. Stephen Gaines. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Pleasure. We'll take a look at that.